So, welcome back to another episode of Keen on Australia. We're obviously back into a new year. Everyone's getting excited about starting to move, and we've got more great episodes coming up for you. Just remember, all of our episodes are advice and they're for educational purposes. If you're doing something, we highly recommend you seek out specific advice for your situation and hire a professional to talk to about it. But today we've got a great guest on. We're going to be talking about super and superannuation here in Australia and plans for retirement. And today we've got Jackson. Jackson, why don't you tell us a bit about yourself?
Yes, Darren. So I'm Jackson Millan, also known as the Wealth Mentor. I've been involved in the business and wealth strategy space for over 16 years now. And I got involved in this space because my parents were business owners. They were both very good at what they did, but they were never very good with money. And the reality was that they were never taught. Their parents didn't know, and their parents before them didn't know. My dad was a migrant, so he had to learn all of this stuff from scratch. And like many migrants before him, they learned through the school of hard knocks. So I made it my life's mission to simplify the language of money and help business owners like my parents get into their financial driver's seat and to create financial freedom faster for themselves and their families. And 7 years ago, I founded a business called Aureus Financial. And we've now been able to help over 1,000 clients build in excess of 3 billion in combined wealth. And yes, that's billion with a B. And I've also published 6 international best-selling books along the way. So it's been an incredible journey, and looking forward to sharing some value with some folks coming to Australia.
Oh, that's an awesome journey. And like I say, that's the sort of thing we want for our guests. They ask the question, we get them the advice. So, a big one for people moving, they might not have had something like super at all, or they're going to be coming first time to Australian super. What is it, and how's it going to work for most people?
Yes, so let's give a little bit of a background. So, our superannuation system is essentially our retirement savings or pension system that we have here in Australia. And it's arguably one of the best in the world, in the developed world. We have trillions of dollars in the system, and essentially, it is meant to be a forced savings scheme to help individuals in Australia self-fund their retirement. And as a result, there is a significant number of tax incentives associated with utilizing it as a wealth creation vehicle. So essentially, superannuation is essentially a tax structure for holding money. And it allows us to put money in concessionally or pre-tax, and we'll be able to claim a tax deduction on those contributions. It allows us to get a concessional tax rate on any earnings based on how we choose to have that invested inside superannuation. And by the time we get to retirement age, which we'll talk about a little bit more, it is the only way that you can receive tax-free income and pay zero tax on any yield that you receive or any capital gains that you produce on those savings. So it is a fantastic and very lucrative scheme that exists. So one of the big issues, Darren, and it's not just for migrants, but for Australians as a whole, is that superannuation is very complicated and the government doesn't do a very good job at educating people about it. And I think for many people, they kind of turn their nose up at it a little bit. They're like, oh, well, I can't touch the money. I don't really understand it. I can't access it until I'm old and grey. So I don't really care about it. And for this reason, I feel that a lot of people, business owners and migrants alike, they are sleeping on the opportunity that exists of how they can use their super. And a little known fact, we can actually use our superannuation in Australia to buy residential real estate, which as soon as I say that, most people prick their ears up. So hopefully we'll have a little bit of time to talk about how people might be able to pursue that if it's the right strategy for them.
Oh, I'd 100% agree. Like myself, like I'm only in my 40s. When I was young, KiwiSaver came into New Zealand. I was actually there when it started. And I looked at it and went, I might not live to 65. Well, I'm going to give the government my money. I can manage it better. And KiwiSaver was not as great as Super. The multipliers in Super and the tax benefits here are so much greater that obviously here it's quite an incentive to start it, whether you're on wages or a business owner. It's just phenomenal. But for, say, most people, you say this money goes into their super, is that going to come out of their hourly rate or is that normally on top of their hourly rate or how does that sort of work?
Yeah, so there's probably four buckets that you might find yourself in, Darren, depending on your employment or how you're structured. So the first one is if you're an employee, there's one of two ways, and you need to negotiate this as part of your remuneration package when you come to Australia. Vast majority of employment contracts that I see, most businesses will extend a salary plus superannuation. So superannuation is paid on top of the salary package. And there is a mandatory superannuation contribution at the moment at 11.5%. It is mandated to go to 12% in the not too distant future. So I think it's really imperative that if you're negotiating your remuneration package, that you're always looking to get your super on top of your package, because we have seen some individuals that have a total inclusive package or inclusive super. And that basically means that there's going to be an 11.5% deducted from your remuneration, obviously meaning there's less money going in your pocket. The second bucket is that you're a sole trader. So you set up your business here in Australia as an individual, and there's no mandatory requirement for you to put money into superannuation. And many sole traders decide not to put money into super because they're not strong-armed into doing it. I personally disagree with that. I feel that lots of business owners end up having very small amounts of retirement savings for this reason. And I believe that for most people, they should treat themselves like an employee, whether they work for themselves or work for somebody else. And they should be trying to do the 11.5%. And the last bucket is that you run a company, and you are an employee of your own company. Many business owners pay themselves a low wage. So similarly, I think it's important that you should be working towards paying yourself what you're worth. So if you went and got a job in the free market as an employee, what would you demand? And therefore pay the appropriate amount of superannuation as a result.
Awesome. So people are putting this money in out of their wages normally. Can they top it up or can they put extra money? Is there any rules around what they can do with if they've got some spare money?
You certainly can. So there's basically two types of contributions that we can make into superannuation. One is called concessional contributions, or in layman's terms, pre-tax contributions. And as it stands right now, we have the ability to put $30,000 a year pre-tax concessionally. So that also includes your employer contribution. So let's say, for argument's sake, you're on a $100,000 salary. Your employer by default will be putting in 11,500 in. So you have the ability to top up the rest of the 18,500 in order to get to the total of the 30,000 per year. The second type of contribution that you can make is what's called a non-concessional contribution, or an after-tax contribution. So this is essentially money that you've received through your employment or through earnings. You've paid tax on it already and it's sitting in your bank account. And you decide that it makes sense to put it in a concessionally taxed environment in order to invest it and use that towards your retirement savings. As a general rule of thumb, and obviously it depends for different individuals, most people don't consider doing non-concessional contributions unless they're fully maxed their concessional contributions first. Because why not get the tax deductions and the tax benefits firstly? But it's important to get advice based on your particular situation.
Awesome. So you've been putting this money into super. It's starting to build up and that. When are the times you can take it out? Are there any rules that let you to take it out, or is it just at retirement or?
Yeah, so essentially there's a condition in order to get access to the tax benefits. I'll talk a little bit about the tax benefits first. So generally speaking, for most people, when they put money into super, it's taxed at a flat rate of 15% compared to if you're in the top marginal tax rate, you're earning over 200 grand a year, you'll pay 45 cents tax in a dollar. So there's a pretty significant differential there between tax in super and tax personally. So that's the first benefit. The second benefit is that inside super, your earnings that you make, so if you invest in super and there's returns that are produced, that's taxed between 10 and 15%. So once again, significant discount compared to if you invested personally, where you might pay up to 45% tax there. And then if we hold the superannuation to what's called preservation age and we convert that into a pension, we pay zero tax on earnings and zero tax on any money that we draw down. So the government gives us all of those fantastic incentives. And the reason why they do it is that they're not philanthropists. That we've got an aging population here in Australia. Our Centrelink public pension system is just not great enough to subsidize people being funded by the government. So the government gives you these incentives in order for you to be self-funded in retirement. That's the goal. Now, In exchange for having that money in the concessional environment, we need to meet what's called a condition of release. And there's basically a preservation age. So the two ages typically to keep in mind is that if you retire from age 60 or onwards, you can access that money tax free or convert it into a pension. Or if you turn 65, whether or not you continue to work or not, you can access that money tax free or convert it into a pension. But the vast majority of our clients, they typically partially retire at age 60 and they typically work in some capacity there onwards, but that allows them the opportunity to access their retirement savings in super.
That's awesome. And like I say, it's great that again you can exit it a bit earlier if you've done well and you've got some
Yes.
options with it. So there seems to be lots of super accounts. How do people work out which one to use, or do they just use the one their work offers them, or like do they hire someone that can consult to say, hey, you should use this one, or how do people work out which one to pick?
Yes. So there's a common misconception, and most people ask the question, how has your super fund performed? Okay. And that's a ill-formed question, to be respectful. Okay. What we need to understand is the mechanism of superannuation. So, as I mentioned originally, superannuation is just a structure for holding money. It's a set of rules and regulations. It doesn't produce a return. It's just a structure for holding money. Okay. So, what we need to consider is the provider that we choose that provides you with that structure. And I'll talk a little bit more about that. And we also need to choose the investment options that that money is invested into, depending on the structure that you've chosen. So typically there's three main structures in Australia around superannuation. Your first one is what's called your industry superannuation funds. And your industry superannuation funds are essentially not-for-profit superannuation funds that were originally based on certain industries. So the hospitality industry has one, the construction industry has one, and they used to primarily just be used by those industries, but now anybody can get access to them. You don't have to be in that industry to access them. And industry super funds have become synonymous with really low fees and also pretty consistent performance and returns. So they've done very, very well, and many people choose them because they're quite simple, they're relatively easy to navigate, and obviously they come at a relatively low cost. The second structure that you may choose is what's called a retail superannuation fund, which is essentially a for-profit platform. But like most for-profit platforms, they come with extra features and benefits. So, for example, some of our clients choose a retail provider with, say, AMP or MLC or another provider, and it's because it gives them access to more investment options, more levels of sophistication. So as your pool of funds increase, you may want to invest in a particular way, and therefore you may choose another platform, which may come at a higher cost, but it's about identifying the opportunity cost. What am I paying? And what extra value am I getting? There's no point paying for features that you're not going to use. So that's a really important consideration. And then the third structure is a self-managed superannuation fund, or an SMSF. And a self-managed superannuation fund, much like the name indicates, is essentially you are able to run that structure yourself. And one of the benefits and one of the reasons why many people choose an SMSF is because, unlike the other structures, you can invest in residential real estate. So you can go and buy an investment property in Brisbane or wherever you like. And you have more control how your funds are invested. Now, once again, it's typically for more sophisticated individuals. And I would probably say, as a general rule of thumb, our clients only consider an SMSF once they're at about $500,000 in terms of their balance. So there's a couple of ways that you go about this to answer the second part of your question, Darren, because this can once again can get quite complicated. First port of call is jump online and do some basic research. There's some great comparison tools like ChantWest and finder.com.au and a lot of other. All you need to do is just go into Google and just type in Super Fund Comparison Australia. And what that will allow you to do is to get a rough crash course on how super works and allow you to compare some options, because all employers have to offer a choice. They have a kind of a standard fund. If you don't have one, they will suggest. But how do you know if it's any good or if it meets your goals and objectives unless you do some research? Okay. Your second option is to engage a financial advisor. So in Australia, financial advisors are licensed to be able to help you understand what you're trying to achieve, help you navigate your situation. We've got access to software where we can do the research on your behalf and then present you with the most appropriate options based on your goals and your preferences for investing and what you're trying to achieve. Um, like any area of expertise, like in your space, Darren, property is very complicated, and your clients engage you to help them find they're the suitable property. Superannuation is no different. And for many people, I urge them to get advice because it's a very, very complicated space. It's like performing financial brain surgery sometimes.
That's awesome. So say they moved here 2, 3 years ago, they missed this. They just sort of started plodding along. They might have opened a business. They're doing quite well. Can they go backwards, or have they sort of mucked it up? Is there an opportunity they can come to you and say, "Hey, look, this is what I've done, but I actually moved here on this day. Is there anything you can do to help me?" Is there a backwards window they have?
Yes. So you're not locked into any superannuation fund. So essentially, you can review this at any point in time. And this is going to change like most things, right? When people grow out of a home, they might come to Australia and have a particular property, but then as their family unit grows or as they advance their career or build more wealth, their dream home goals might change. Same thing with superannuation. So what we typically find is that for most people, they're going to find themselves in about three buckets of super. So the first one is lower than $50,000 balance. So you've just started, you just got here, and you're getting to 50K. General rule of thumb is to keep your fees really low and to make sure that we've got good, consistent performance. So for many people, they choose an industry fund. Then from 50 up to about 300,000, that's where we start getting a little bit more sophistication. We might want to start implementing a little bit more detailed and bespoke investment strategy to allow us to accelerate our path to getting to that financial freedom. Because the reality is at 300 grand, you're not going to retire. It's not going to last you very long. And then we've got that 300 grand. And that's really where we start considering get a pathway to self-managed superannuation. Usually for most of our clients, once they've got that kind of balance, usually the kids are flying the coop or getting to becoming more independent. Home's pretty much paid off, and they're on that kind of 10 to 15 year stretch to retirement. And that's really where we need to be focusing our attention on retirement planning. And what this comes down to, Darren, is not just super, this is about life stages planning, right? We want to make sure that for our clients, yes, they've got that long-term bucket filled. So from 60 plus, they can be financially free. But I don't know about you, mate. I don't want to wait until 60 to be financially free. So for our clients, we want to make sure that they can fill their short and medium-term bucket. And they've got a really great strategic plan that gives them peace of mind and certainty about achieving their short, medium, and long-term objectives, both lifestyle and financial. And that's what financial planning comes down to, and superannuation is just a part of that overall process.
So would a financial planner be the person you sit down with? So you're on wages, you're on not a bad job, but that's all you've got. Would they be someone you can sit down with and do a calculation to work out how much you sort of need to get into that super fund so you can retire?
Certainly, yeah. So how we work, and we essentially work with our clients to create that strategic plan. And essentially, what we typically work out first is we want to understand your current position. Where are you at? What are you doing? What's working? What's not? And it allows us to take stock because most people don't have a formal review process to measure their performance financially. And we feel that's really important. Next, we want to get clear on all of your goals, dreams, and aspirations. So, our methodology is to help our clients create a 20-year roadmap. And that's about documenting all of their lifestyle and financial goals over 1, 5, 10, 15, and 20 years. And that might sound a little bit scary. Like most people don't know what they want for dinner tonight. But we've got a really great process that helps people make that space and have those conversations with their significant other and with their family and document those things. Because once we are clear on the destinations and the milestones, it's really easy for us to reverse engineer that. And then once we've got clear on all of those milestones, we can then start setting financial targets that we need to hit. So for most of our clients, I'd probably say that they want between 100 and 200 grand a year in passive income in retirement. So that's going to mean that they need between $2 and $4 million in today's dollars in investment assets in order to provide that lifestyle, not considering inflation over the next 10, 15, 20 years. So then it's a matter of working out, well, okay, based on your current position and what you're trying to achieve, what is the best financial plan to get you where you want to go? And how do we start utilizing strategies and tactics like superannuation, like property investing, like debt recycling, like investing in the stock market, or all of these other strategies that we've got available in order to start bridging that gap and getting there faster?
That's awesome. So, with everything we analyze for our clients and when we help them move, we always make sure they understand the big don'ts. Are there any real big don'ts or things people have to watch out for with super?
Great question. Don't do anything brash. So don't take barbecue advice just because your Uncle Bill at the family barbecue says that he's with one particular fund and it's the best. Um, just take advice from people who know what they're talking about. So don't be brash. Second part, don't sleep on the value of insurance and personal protection. By default, most superannuation funds have some level of insurance, usually life insurance and total and permanent disability. Many of our clients choose to use their super as a way of funding their insurance as pre-tax. And it can be a really effective way for you to maximize your personal cash flow whilst putting that retirement savings money to work for you. And I think for many people, we think we're 10 foot tall and bulletproof and we go, that insurance stuff, don't care, cancel it. And we've unfortunately had individuals who've cancelled policies and not long after had serious events that have occurred where they would have done anything to get those insurance policies back in place, but unfortunately couldn't. And I think thirdly, don't underestimate the power of superannuation over the long term, because those tax concessions can allow you to compound your wealth significantly and substantially. So building superannuation into your strategy and not just ignoring it because you can't access it for so long, is one of those things I just wouldn't do.
That's awesome. Well, thank you for all your advice today. It's been so helpful for our people that are moving because obviously it's all going to be new to them. If someone was going to start moving over here, they had a bit of money with them, or they were going to open a business, a company, whereabouts can they find you if they did need some more specific help?
Yes, so we exclusively work with business owners and we help them navigate their profit strategy, how do they maximize the money they make from their business, help them turn that into personal wealth and then optimize their tax, making sure they've got the right structures and they're not paying any bonuses to the tax man. So the best place to start is our 40-point financial performance scorecard, which allows you to work at exactly how you're tracking and where are the areas you need to focus your attention. So if you go to wealthhealth.com.au, that's wealthhealthcheck.com.au. Complete the scorecard. You'll get a customized report, and then we can continue the conversation and see how we can help. Otherwise, you can find me on social media. Just search for Jackson Millan or Aureus Financial, and feel free to follow along with the journey.
Awesome. Oh, cheers for that again, and thank you for being on our show. I'll drop those links in our information below so people can find them easily. For everyone that is listening, if you've got any questions, reach out to us. Let us know what you want to know about moving to Australia. We'll go find the right expert to answer the questions for you. We've got more shows coming up. We've got one on wheels, we've got another one on purchasing cars, and we're going to be talking to some more people that have made the move over 12 months ago and how it went for them. You'll find us on all the major platforms for listening to podcasts, and all of our questions can be asked through any of them or our Facebook page. Thank you for listening to Get Keen on Australia again, and we'll talk to you all again soon.